Welcome. Today we will unpack why immigration cases often jump backward from a scheduled or near-term merits hearing to a new master calendar hearing after a detained person is transferred. First, we will outline how the immigration hearing system works. Then we will tie those rules to what happens during transfers. And finally, we will discuss practical steps and high-stakes considerations like prior entries and criminal history. Next, let's set expectations with an important disclaimer. Before we go further, a quick but essential disclaimer. This video provides general information, not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. Immigration law is complex, fact-specific, and subject to change. You should consult a qualified immigration attorney to discuss your particular circumstances. With that foundation in place, let's preview what we will cover today. Here is our roadmap. First, we'll contrast master calendar hearings and merits hearings. Next, we'll explain why a transfer often forces the case back to master calendar. Then, we'll clarify venue versus jurisdiction. After that, we'll address high-stakes factors like entry without inspection and criminal history. We'll also cover concrete steps families can take. Finally, we'll include quick knowledge checks to reinforce key ideas. Now let's start by defining the two main hearing types. The master calendar hearing is the administrative starting point in immigration court. At this initial appearance, the judge confirms the respondent's identity, ensures the notice to appear was received, verifies the charges, addresses jurisdictional and venue issues, identifies whether the respondent has counsel, and sets a procedural timeline for the case. Relief categories, such as asylum or cancellation of removal, are identified here so the court can schedule filings and future hearings. With that foundation, let's look more closely at what actually happens during the MCH. During the MCH, the judge confirms identity and language needs, verifies that the respondent received the notice to appear, and, if necessary, reads or explains the charges. The Department of Homeland Security attorney states the grounds of removability. Counsel, if present, enters an appearance and indicates what relief will be pursued, such as asylum, cancellation of removal, or voluntary departure. The court sets deadlines for applications and evidence and establishes the next hearing date. If the respondent is detained, the court may address detention or bond status, depending on the court's authority and the case posture. Having covered the MCH, we can now contrast it with the final stage, the merits hearing. The merits hearing, often called the individual hearing, functions like a trial. The respondent and any witnesses testify, documentary evidence is submitted and evaluated, and legal arguments are made. The immigration judge then rules on the requested relief, granting it, denying it, or issuing an order of removal. Because of the preparation and court time required, getting to this stage typically takes months, and scheduling is tightly controlled. Now that we understand the two hearing types, let's examine why a transfer can push a case backward from merits to master calendar. When a detained respondent is moved across state lines and into a different immigration court's coverage area, the receiving court must first assert venue and bring the case into its docket. A new judge will review the case file, focusing on detention status, any bond issues, and the current procedural posture. Because the judge's calendar and local procedures differ, scheduling and filing deadlines are reset, and in some jurisdictions, certain applications or exhibits may need to be resubmitted. Importantly, jurisdiction generally follows the respondent, but the venue change triggers the procedural reset. To visualize this, let's walk through a flowchart of the transfer process. This flowchart begins with a case set for a merits hearing in Court A. After the detained respondent is transferred across state lines, we ask whether the venue remains the same. If not, venue changes to Court B, where a new judge first asserts venue, reviews the file for detention and bond questions, and evaluates the procedural posture. The judge then sets new deadlines and dates and, where required, requests refiling of applications or exhibits. The process culminates in scheduling a new master calendar hearing in Court B. If the venue had remained the same, the existing schedule might be maintained if local rules and logistics permit. Having mapped the logic, let's now look at how the overall timeline shifts before and after a transfer. The timeline compares two paths. Before transfer, the sequence is straightforward. The notice to appear is served, an MCH is held, deadlines are set, and the merits hearing is scheduled. After a transfer, the path changes. The transfer occurs, the new court asserts venue, a new MCH is scheduled, new deadlines are set, and only then is the merits hearing rescheduled. The additional steps introduce delay and uncertainty, shifting the finish line further away. With timing in mind, let's directly compare master calendar and merits to cement the distinctions. On the left, the master calendar hearing is administrative. The court confirms identity, addresses charges and venue, notes representation, identifies relief, and sets deadlines. Dockets are often crowded, and appearances are brief. On the right, the merits hearing functions like a trial, with witnesses, documentary evidence, and a final decision on relief or removal. When transfers occur, merits dates are frequently vacated and replaced with a new MCH so the receiving court can take control of the case and calendar. With the procedural framework clear, let's turn to the high-stakes factors that can narrow or foreclose relief. This table outlines common aggravating factors and their typical immigration impact. Entry without inspection creates inadmissibility issues that constrain relief paths. DWI or DUI convictions can establish removability and weigh heavily against discretionary relief, often undermining cancellation of removal. Crimes causing injury present serious concerns and may trigger categorical bars, though the specific statute governs the analysis. Domestic violence offenses can create separate grounds of removability and frequently bar cancellation while also harming discretionary assessments. Aggravated felonies, where applicable under the statute, introduce some of the harshest immigration penalties and foreclose many forms of relief. Because outcomes depend on precise statutory definitions and the record of conviction, consultation with a knowledgeable attorney is essential. With the risk landscape defined, let's address detention and bond considerations that often arise during and after transfer. Detention status heavily influences options. Some respondents fall into mandatory detention categories, making bond unavailable. Transfers can disrupt communication between counsel and client and complicate evidence collection. The added delay from a reset may change litigation strategy, and in some cases, counsel may advise exploring voluntary departure if eligibility exists. Families should calibrate expectations, because serious criminal history or statutory bars narrow potential outcomes. After a reset, documentation, deadlines, and organizational discipline become even more critical. Now, to translate this into practical action, let's cover concrete steps families can take. Here are practical steps for families. First, track the detained person's location using available detainee locator tools following any transfer. Second, keep essential documents organized, including identification, court notices, charging documents, and certified records of conviction. Third, maintain updated relief applications, supporting evidence, and any required translations. Fourth, monitor court deadlines closely after a reset. Dates and requirements may change with the new court. Fifth, communicate with counsel regularly to align on strategies. Sixth, manage expectations, because criminal and immigration history can drastically limit options. Seventh, if asylum or similar relief is pursued, develop country conditions evidence early. Next, let's test your understanding with a quick knowledge check. Quiz time. Which statement best explains why a case often returns to a master calendar hearing after a detainee transfer across state lines? Option A, because jurisdiction is lost and must be recreated from scratch. Option B, because the new court must assert venue, review the file, and reset deadlines. Option C, because the respondent automatically becomes eligible for bond. Option D, because the previous judge's decisions are void in every transfer. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is, because the new court must assert venue, review the file, and reset deadlines. A transfer generally does not destroy jurisdiction, but it does require the receiving court to take administrative control, leading to a new master calendar hearing and revised schedules. Now, let's try a second quick check. Second question. Which hearing is primarily administrative and used to identify relief and set deadlines? Option A, merits hearing. Option B, master calendar hearing. Option C, bond redetermination hearing. Option D, appellate oral argument. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is the master calendar hearing. That is the administrative setup where identity, charges, relief, and deadlines are addressed to prepare for the merits hearing. With the knowledge checks complete, let's consolidate key takeaways. Key points. First, transfers commonly trigger a new master calendar hearing so the receiving court can assert venue and set a fresh schedule. Second, Jurisdiction usually follows the respondent. The venue change is what drives the reset. Third, delays are common, making preparation and communication with counsel critical. Fourth, aggravating factors such as entry without inspection, DWI, crimes causing injury, or domestic violence can significantly narrow relief. Fifth, families should track the detainee's location, organize documents, and coordinate closely with counsel. Next, let's close with a succinct summary. In summary, the master calendar hearing is the setup stage, while the merits hearing is the final, trial-like adjudication. When a detained respondent is transferred across jurisdictions, the process usually resets to a new MCH so the receiving court can assert venue, review the file, and build a new schedule. High-stakes background factors, including entries and criminal history, significantly influence available relief. Staying organized, tracking deadlines, and working closely with counsel are essential. Finally, let's wrap with a quick call to action. Thank you for watching. If this breakdown brought clarity, please like the video, share it with someone navigating the immigration court process, and subscribe for more practical explainers. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what topics you want next.